Welcome to Past Unboxed. This is where ancient wisdom is brought to life through immersive audiobooks crafted for the modern soul. Today, you're listening to Unshakable, how the ancients built inner power, a journey into timeless strength, forged not in comfort, but in adversity. This book isn't about perfection. It's about presence, about standing tall when the world shakes, and remembering the power that's always lived inside you. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. There's a fire inside you. It doesn't roar. It doesn't demand. It doesn't even always show itself. But it's there. It burns quietly, in the background of your thoughts, behind your fears, beneath your disappointments. It's the part of you that refuses to give up, even when the rest of you feels like surrendering. The part of you that says, there has to be more than this. That fire is not ambition. It's not pride. It's not even strength in the way we often define it. It's deeper than that. Older, it is your will to continue. And it is the first thing the ancients learned to protect. You see, our ancestors did not live in easy times. Their world was raw. The elements were not metaphors. They were threats. Hunger was not an inconvenience. It was a daily test. Loss was not occasional. It was expected. And yet they did not fold. They endured. Not because they had more resources than we do, but because they understood something we often forget. True power is not about what you control. It's about what you carry inside when you can't control anything at all. They cultivated inner fire, a flame that couldn't be put out by cold winds, long nights, or hard seasons. That fire wasn't about dominance. It wasn't about ego. It was about presence, about choosing to stand mentally, spiritually, even when their bodies were weak or their futures uncertain. Let me tell you something the modern world has hidden from you. You are stronger than you've been taught to believe. But strength is not given. It's remembered. And this chapter is the beginning of that remembering. Take a moment. Close your eyes, not to escape, but to see more clearly. Feel the tension in your body, the subtle ache of trying too hard, running too long, carrying too much. That tension is the smoke rising from your inner fire, the signal that something inside you is trying to hold on. Now ask yourself, what has kept you going? Not just recently, but always. Was it hope? Was it habit? Was it some invisible thread you couldn't name? Whatever it was, it came from the fire. And the fire came from those who came before you. This fire, your fire, is not random. It is inherited. It is human. It is ancient. It comes from the ones who lived through plagues and droughts, wars and exile, heartbreak and hunger. It comes from those who had nothing but gave everything, from those who lost everything but stood back up, again and again and again. You are their continuation. And your inner power doesn't begin with self-help advice or productivity hacks. It begins with reclaiming that fire. The ancient people knew how to do this. They had no choice but to learn. They built fire, not just outside but within, through ritual, through story, through breath, through pain. They did not always win, but they always endured. They were never unafraid, but they acted anyway. They were not untouched by loss, but they did not let it define them. Because somewhere inside, they understood, power is not the absence of struggle. Power is the relationship you build with it. If you fight it constantly, you lose. If you ignore it, it consumes you. But if you face it directly, quietly, bravely, it transforms you. Let's be clear, inner power isn't loud. It doesn't scream or punch or pretend. It whispers, it grounds, it knows. It says, I've been here before, and I could be here again. When the ground shakes, inner power does not panic. It roots deeper. When the wind rises, it leans into the storm. When everything breaks, it looks at the pieces and says, let's begin again. That kind of strength cannot be faked. It must be forged. And forging takes heat, pressure, time. So if your life has felt heavy lately, if your heart has been aching, your mind spinning, don't see it as weakness. See it as the forge. You're not falling apart. You're being shaped by fire, by force, by fate, and by your own quiet decision not to quit. That decision to stay, to try, to keep breathing when you'd rather disappear is the proof of your power. And it's enough. More than enough. This is what the ancients would tell you if they could speak now. You were not born into safety. You were born into fire. And the fire was never meant to consume you. It was meant to awaken you. The next time life presses on you, presses into you, don't pull away. Pause. Feel the fire. Ask what it's trying to teach you. Then stand a little taller. Speak a little clearer. And walk forward. Even if it's slow, even if it's hard. Because that is what the strong do. That is what you were born to do. And this is just the first spark. There will come a time, maybe it already has, when nothing around you makes sense. When the plans you made fall apart. When the people you counted on disappear. When the voice in your head turns against you. And even your breath feels heavy. This is the storm. And whether it's a storm of grief, confusion, failure, or change, it doesn't matter. The form is different. The feeling is the same. The ground shifts. The sky darkens. And suddenly, everything inside you is asking, what do I do now? Here's what the ancient ones would say. You stand. You don't run. You don't pretend. You don't numb yourself with noise or distraction. You simply stand. Not because it feels easy. Not because you know what's coming. But because standing, even with shaky legs, is the first act of unshakable power. Let's make something clear. Strength is not about knowing. It's about choosing. And the choice to remain in discomfort, in uncertainty, in silence is a sacred one. It's a decision your ancestors made every day. They stood in storms that lasted not hours, but years. They faced loss that never fully healed. They woke up to hunger, to danger, to despair, and still they stood. Why? Because something in them refused to fall before life did. They weren't emotionless. They cried. They feared. They doubted. But they did not run from the moment. They knew power is presence. And presence is not passive. It's active. It's fierce. It's the inner declaration that says, I may not know how this ends, but I am here for it. Now pause. Think about your own storm. Not the one people can see, the one you carry quietly. Maybe it's the weight of expectation. Maybe it's loss, someone you couldn't save, or something you couldn't hold on to. Maybe it's the fear of becoming stuck, of never changing, or worse, changing into someone you don't recognize. Whatever it is, it's yours, and you've been trying to outrun it, or outthink it, or outwork it. But what if, just for a moment, you stopped running? What if you let it catch you? What if, instead of resisting, you stood inside it? This is not surrender. This is strength. Because the strongest people are not the ones who never fall apart. They're the ones who choose to stay present while doing so. To sit in the middle of their mess and say, yes, this is where I am, and I will meet myself here. In ancient times, storms were not just weather. They were symbols of change, of trial, of spiritual testing. They believed every storm held a lesson, not about the world, but about the self. What do you reach for when everything falls? What do you believe when your comfort is gone? Who do you become when no one is watching? These were the questions that shaped inner power, and they still do. So how do you stand in a storm? You start small. You anchor your breath. You feel your feet on the ground. You speak a truth, even if it's whispered. I am still here. And every time the fear rises, you let it pass through you like wind. Not because you are fearless, but because you know the wind does not last. This is how unshakable strength is built. One breath, one grounded thought, one honest presence at a time. Not by fighting the storm, but by becoming still inside it. There's a power in not reacting, in not lashing out, in not collapsing into chaos. That power is ancient. It lives in your blood. It's what your people survived on. And now, It lives in you, waiting to be remembered. You don't need answers right now. You don't need certainty. You only need to stay, because the storm will pass. But what remains after, that's who you truly are. So the next time the world shakes, don't shrink, don't harden, don't disappear. Stunt. Even if your heart is breaking, even if your knees are trembling, even if all you can do is breathe and whisper, "This is hard, but I'm still standing." That is not weakness. That is courage. That is how power begins. And that is how it grows. In the next part, we'll explore that growth, not as something dramatic or flashy, but as something deep, steady, and sacred. Because true strength isn't about what you show the world. It's about what you survive without losing yourself. There's a quiet kind of power in staying. Staying when it's not exciting. Staying when it's uncomfortable. Staying when every part of you wants to walk away from the goal, the process, even from yourself. In a world that worships instant results, persistence has become rare. And yet, it is one of the most ancient, most sacred forms of strength we know. To endure without applause. To remain steady without recognition. To keep going when nothing is guaranteed. That is a warrior's path. Not the kind of warrior that charges into battle with steel and fury, but the kind who walks through long winters without losing their soul. The kind who keeps planting seeds even when the sky stays dry. The ancients understood this deeply. They were not driven by dopamine hits or external validation. They were guided by cycles, seasons, faith, discipline. A farmer did not walk away from his field because it hadn't bloomed in a week. A builder did not abandon a wall because it hadn't become a fortress overnight. They knew all things of value take time. So they waited, they returned, they stayed. And what about you? How often have you walked away because the results didn't come fast enough? How many times have you whispered, "What's the point?" when the work felt invisible? You're not alone. In a world of constant comparison and performance, it's easy to believe that if no one sees your effort, it doesn't matter. But here's what the ancient ones knew, and what you're now remembering. Endurance is not about being seen. It's about becoming solid for yourself. Because when you stay with something long enough, it begins to change you. Not just the work. You become deeper, wiser, clearer. And that transformation, it's the real reward. Think about the strongest trees, the ones that survive storms and droughts. Do they grow overnight? No, they grow down before they grow up. Roots first, always roots first. And those roots are built in darkness, in silence, in solitude. So if your life right now feels like you're buried, like nothing is blooming, maybe you're not buried at all. Maybe you're rooting. Maybe the slowness isn't punishment, but preparation. Let's pause. Ask yourself, what am I building that I can't yet see? Or have I been consistent, even if unnoticed? What does it mean for me to stay, even without reward? These aren't easy questions, but they are ancient ones. Because every great life was built in the space between starting and arriving. That space? It's uncomfortable, boring, uncelebrated. But it's where power is formed. Your ancestors didn't have shortcuts. They had patience. They didn't have hacks. They had rhythm. They rose before the sun. They showed up not once, not twice, but for years. Even when it hurt. Even when it felt hopeless. Because they believed that consistency was sacred. That showing up day after day was a prayer of strength. And now it's your turn. Not to chase speed, but to build weight. Not to impress others, but to align with yourself. Not to rush toward results, but to stay in the process with presence and purpose. Remember this. Every time you return to the work, mental, emotional, spiritual, you are building something no one can take from you. You are becoming dependable to yourself. You are proving that your word matters, that your vision matters, that you matter, even when no one is watching. This is how you become unshakable, not through intensity, but through integrity, not through sparks, but through embers that never go out. So stay. Stay in the healing. Stay in the habits. Stay in the hard conversations with yourself. Even if no one claps. Even if no one sees. Because you see. And your future self is waiting for what you're building now. Silently, slowly, patiently. The path of endurance is not glamorous, but is holy. And those who walk it become not just strong, but unbreakable. There is no weapon more powerful than the mind. It can destroy you or deliver you. It can trap you or set you free. And the most remarkable thing, you carry it with you everywhere. But most people never learn how to use it. They react instead of respond. They repeat instead of reflect. They let the mind run wild instead of training it to serve them. The ancients knew better. They didn't just worship the mind, they trained it, sharpened it, disciplined it, because they understood a powerful mind is not one that knows everything. It's one that can choose its focus, direct its energy, stand still when everything else is pulling it away. You can't always control your emotions. You can't always change your circumstances, but you can shape the lens through which you experience both. And that lens? That's your mental weapon. Let's explore what the ancient ones used. Not in books or labs, but in caves, temples, deserts, and huts to shape their inner strength. 1. The practice of observation. Before reacting, they watched. Before judging, they noticed. They believed that seeing clearly was the first step toward power. So when pain came, they didn't push it away. They watched it. When fear rose, they didn't run. They named it. They became witnesses of their own inner life, not prisoners of it. Can you do that? Can you notice your thoughts without becoming them? Can you sit with your anger long enough to understand its root? This is not denial. It's awareness. And awareness is the first tool of the mind. 2. The power of naming. Words shape perception. In ancient times, naming a fear was believed to reduce its power. If you could give it a name, you could relate to it, not as something infinite, but as something specific. They would speak their fears aloud to the fire. They would write their thoughts into earth or stone. There comes a point, after the storm, after the fall, after the long silence, where you face a question that changes everything. Now what? You survived. But what do you do with survival? You endured the fire, the fracture, the unraveling. And now you're standing in the aftermath, changed, maybe even uncertain of who you are anymore. This is where many people stop. They rebuild what they lost. They chase what was. They try to become the person they were before the breaking. But the ancients didn't see the end as a return to normal. They saw it as a sacred threshold, a chance not to go back, but to become new. Rebuilding is not about recovery. It's about recreation. Not about pretending the pain never happened, but about allowing it to refine you. The scars aren't shameful. They're sacred. They're maps. Proof that you were here, that you stayed, that you changed. The ancient ones didn't just survive their trials. They became storytellers, elders, guides. They passed down not just what happened, but what they learned. Not just their victories, but their values. And now, so can you. So what do you want to rebuild? Not just in your career or your relationships, but in your identity. Who are you now after everything? Who are you? Not when things are easy, but when you are alone, quietly, honestly, breathing in your own space. This is the foundation of strength. Not control, not certainty, but clarity. A deep knowing that says, I am not who I was. And that is not a tragedy. It is a triumph. You are allowed to grow into someone new, someone braver, softer, wiser, more grounded. You are allowed to live with different values now, to speak differently, to love differently, to rest more, to rise slower, to let go faster, because rebuilding is not a race. It is a rite of passage, and only those who walk through fire know the language of ashes and how to build beauty from them. Your strength is no longer loud. It's quiet, rooted, integrated. It shows up in the way you breathe before reacting, in the way you choose kindness when you could choose control, in the way you stay with yourself, even when it hurts. That is the kind of power no one can steal, and no storm can shake. And now, this is your moment to take everything you've heard, the ancient fire, the storms you've stood through, the endurance you've embodied, the tools you've reclaimed, and begin again. Not from fear, from faith. Faith in the self you've become. Faith in the life still unfolding. Faith in the strength that never left you, only waited for you to see it. Final message. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Unshakable, how the ancients built inner power. We hope this experience gave you strength when you needed it, clarity when you felt lost, and peace where there was once only pressure. If this audiobook moved you, inspired you, or helped you feel a little more human, please consider subscribing to Past Unboxed. We create immersive, soul-stirring audiobooks rooted in timeless wisdom for people like you who are walking deep paths and asking real questions. Like, share, reflect, and return anytime you need to remember your strength. Because you're not alone, and this is just the beginning.